Good evening, Mr. Bond fans, and welcome once again. Chances are when people are discussing the golden age of Bond video games from the late 90s, early 2000s, the common games that crop up in the conversation are N64, GoldenEye, Nightfire, Everything or Nothing. Heck, maybe there are even some 007 racing fans out there. But one game that I've often found missing from the conversation is the video game version of The World's Not Enough. Oh, no, not that one, the other one. No, not that one either. Christ, how many video game spin-offs did that film have? I'm obviously talking about The World's Not Enough for the Nintendo 64, a game overshadowed and outsold by its console-sharing brother, released at the very end of the year 2000 along with two other Bond games, but perhaps more importantly, at a time when gamers are already hopping on board or eagerly anticipating the next generation of consoles. As a result, the game never seemed to have much working in its favour, and as such was probably destined to make little impact at the time of its release. Heck, I was a big Bond fan back then, and even I only came to know of the game's existence much later on. At the time, I had the PS1 version, so even if I knew that this version did exist, I would probably just assume it was the same version of the game but on a different console. But of course, that would have been completely wrong. These games are totally different. Obviously, they're both adaptations of the same source material and both published by EA Games, however, each had its own developer, Black Ops Entertainment for the PS1, and for the N64, Eurocom, a name that simultaneously strikes joy and fear into the hearts of Bond fans after being responsible for both the heaven and hell of future 007 games. Another potentially off-putting element, for me at least, would have been that the game requires an N64 controller pack just to save and was designed for use with the N64 expansion pack, so not only would you need to buy a copy of the game, but also two further accessories to get the most out of it, and the prospect of doing that for a console that was already being overshadowed by the PlayStation 2 and the impending releases of more next-gen consoles, that probably didn't work in the game's favour at all, but it does seem to have acquired something of a cult status amongst Bond fans, who even go as far to say that it's better than GoldenEye, and back in my day, that kind of talk would have got you burnt at the stake. As ever, I'm a Bond fan first and a gamer second, so I'm primarily going to be reviewing this from that perspective, and you know what, I was actually super excited to come into playing this game completely fresh. It felt like a new bit of Bond content during this period of extended 00 droughtage, and very welcome for that reason. For posterity's sake, I do own a copy of the game for the Nintendo 64 and did give it a whirl on that console, but the footage I captured for the purpose of this review is from an emulator because the quality of image is ultimately better. So is The World Is Not Enough for the N64 an overlooked gem, or is it quite rightly hidden at the back of Q's workshop? Well, grab your controllers because that's what we're going to be looking at today. But just before we do that, this is a quick reminder to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Also below you can click the bell button, or the Mrs. Bell button as I'd like to call it from this point on, to stay super up to date on future Bond video uploads that I make on this channel. And with all that being said, let's dive right into the game. Well, loading up the game provides a familiar interface to those of us who played the PS1 version of the title, but we immediately see that the N64 version of the game features a total of 14 single-player levels, 3 more than its counterpart. The first level on each version is called Courier and begins with briefings from M, R, and oh, wait, it's Robinson in the N64 version. Oh, poor Moneypenny. I know her quips in the PS1 version were often useless, but it feels weird not to have a little witticism from her to start off a mission.
This mission should be fairly easy for you, James. You've never seemed to have trouble catching women.
Or venereal disease. It's a bit of an odd choice, really, as Robinson's text doesn't do much other than just give you a bit more mission exposition, which could have just been provided by M, but I guess there is an awful lot of text at the start of some of these missions, so I guess they felt they needed to break it up more, particularly as we don't have voice actors reading the briefings like we did on the PS1. A new element to the briefing sections, and something quite unique to this game in my experience, includes a surveillance section, which actually comes in rather handy. It shows you some of the character models you're likely to come across during your playthrough, and whether the characters are supposed to be left unharmed or not. Story-wise, just like in the film, a fellow MI6 agent has been killed and a report from the Russian Atomic Energy Department has been stolen. It accidentally ended up in the hands of a friend of M's, Sir Robert King, who purchased it believing it had contained information about terrorists. Bond is in Spain to retrieve King's money and interrogate a Swiss banker named Lachaise, who has been keeping some nefarious company. The level begins with a little bit of busy work, just to get you used to how the game handles, as you collect some equipment from the bank's safety deposit boxes, and begin to Melania Trump here along the way. The box includes an appointment card for the meeting and a gadget from Q, a flashbang gun, which video game Bond certainly doesn't use as well as his live-action counterpart, as this cutscene demonstrates.
I retrieved the money. No doubt Sir Robert will be pleased to see it again.
I didn't come just for the money. The report you sold King was stolen from an MI6 agent who was killed for it. I want to know who killed him.
I'm just the middleman. Take the money.
Your last chance. Give me a name.
You still threaten me, even without your weapon?
I kind of love it, because in the film, Bond uses this gadget to get the upper hand in the situation, and here it's like, I mean, stuff's already going down, Lachez has already been killed, and the perpetrator has already fled, and only then does Bond activate it. Like, well, heck, this really wasn't how things were supposed to go. Ill-timed flashbang aside, into the shooting action we go as Bond must now retrieve the money and erase security footage of himself. I should point out here that the playthrough you're watching is me doing this on Secret Agent difficulty, which is the mid-tier setting, and as such some objectives may differ between the various different difficulty settings, which is to be expected, but something really cool about this game is that it throws you more curveballs the higher the difficulty. Like, obviously enemies are stronger and can cause more damage on 00 difficulty, for instance, but some innocent security guards replace the more standard goons on that highest difficulty setting, and these guys can't be killed or you fail the mission, but they'll sure as heck not hold back from trying to take you down, and this just adds a whole other level of strategy to the gameplay, which is really cool for replay value. Retrieving the money leaves you with the final objective of escaping the bank. Now, I've seen the film and played the other game, so I know just how to get out of this building in style. Out we go! Out we go! Am I doing this right? So, in an inexplicable departure from the events of the film, you just have to actually walk out the front of the bank, past all of the security guards who just turn and stare at you on the way out, like, hey fellas, just walking through my big case of money, so long. Ending the level prompts a little cutscene of Bond making his getaway, and then it's into the next level, King's Ransom, which begins with a cutscene with M and an off-duty Fat Controller. No, rather this mighty tash sporting fellow is M's old chum, Sir Robert King.
Sir Robert is an old friend. I helped him years ago when his daughter Electra was kidnapped by the terrorist Renard. Still, all that's in the past.
That's what you think, lady.
It's all so far in the past that I'm sure everyone has completely forgotten about it, particularly Electra, who, we can be sure, holds absolutely no grudge against me whatsoever.
M and Bond chat for a bit before an explosion sounds throughout the building.
Something's not right about all this. King, the money!
This kicks off one of the most epic levels I've ever played in a Bond game. MI6 is completely under attack, with enemies careening through windows, security guards being mowed down, and general lockdown chaos everywhere. This is a fantastic level, and a great way of building on a moment from the film and expanding it out into something quite epic. It's incredible, blasting around these familiar settings with familiar characters being so close to the action. Robinson is here assisting with the lockdown, and there's even a little side mission involving rescuing M and escorting her to safety, and I just love how matter-of-fact she is through all this.
I hope you know what you're doing, 007. If you don't, it would be a good idea if you would take me to the security center now.
This lady is clearly the head of MI6 for a reason, and I can't quite articulate the crushing pressure that overcomes a Bond fan when they are tasked with protecting this wonderful lady from harm. Like, protecting Natalia in GoldenEye, yeah, whatever, she can live or die. Protecting M in this game, every time she dies or gets caught in the crossfire, I feel like I need to commit Bond fan Harikari with a golden gun. Sadly, Moneypenny does not receive this same level of protection and must spend the attack cowering beneath her desk, but hey look, it's Dr. Warmflash.
James.
Stay here, you'll be safe.
Yes, you just stay right here, Doctor. No need to worry as long as you don't...
Sir, these people need urgent medical attention. Can you get the doctor?
Dr. Warmflash, what I just said about you staying here. This game really knows how to up the ante, and it's only the second level of the thing. Like, having to protect all of these MI6 personnel is so much pressure. By the way, if you ever visit a doctor and their first response is to take one look at you and then repeatedly stare at the ground shaking their head, it's probably not a good sign. As much as I do love this level, there are maybe one or two asides that maybe take away from some of the urgency. Like, the whole point is to get to King in the vault, but you keep bumping into guys who rope you into helping them with whatever it is that they're doing, and it does tend to pile up.
Reports of a fire in the lobby. The sprinklers need to be activated manually, sir.
Okay, sprinklers.
The automatic security door system is damaged. Can you reach the manual override, sir?
You reach the bloody override yourself, you cheeky git. I got sprinklers to activate. Eventually, though, you do make it to the exploded vault to find Sir Robert King alive, somehow, despite being at the epicenter of the blast. Maybe that mustache is so thick and mighty it buffered him from the explosion? Well, even the strongest of facial hair can evidently only protect a man so much, as King passes away after handing over the detonator pin to 007, who receives an urgent call from Q that the woman responsible for the explosion is escaping via boat, which of course leads us to Bond jumping into the Q boat and making his pursuit, as the level ends featuring a cameo from Q, who inexplicably here seems to be wearing a dark blonde toupee.
Stop! Stop! It isn't finished!
A curious end to a terrific level, but I must say I absolutely adored playing this, and I came back to it a few times just to explore the thing and try it on different difficulty settings, and I'm pleased to say that this same positivity extends into the next couple of levels as well. First up being Thames Chase, a run and gun level that sees Bond chasing after the cigar girl around the London docklands. I enjoyed this level so much I was quickly over the fact that the pre-level cutscene really did get my hopes up that we'd actually be taking control of the Q-boat in a driving level, but sadly no, such variety of gameplay would presumably take a little longer to develop. But still, this is a fun environment, and there are some hostages thrown in there to save, including this portly looking tourist in a hat who I'm choosing to believe is actually Sheriff Pepper on another out-of-character vacation.
Now, I know you!
Oh no.
The level makes use of one of your main gadgets too, the grapple watch, which you're able to use on these yellow and black marked areas. The watch also contains a stunner, laser, and tranquilizer darts on some levels. There are plenty of other gadgets to use throughout the game, of course, but a super tricked out wristwatch is just one of those real special Brosnan Bond feeling gadgets, and I love that it's with your most missions, whether the level requires a use for it or not. It's just one of those really nice details that really helps you feel like you are stepping into the shoes of James Bond. Completing this level takes you onto something completely removed from the film or the PS1 version of the game as you chase the cigar girl into the London underground.
The woman you're chasing is in this station. A gunman have seized the whole area, and they've got civilians hostage in there. Even worse, we've reports of some kind of bomb. The whole situation is a mess.
Keep your men at a safe distance. I'll handle this.
Yes, sir. You may need this.
We don't like to do that work ourselves, you say, sir, so we rely on gentlemen like yourself passing by. Your accent. Dick Van Dyke, is that you? I don't know what you're insinuating, sir. Now, please get on with me job so I can go home and have me eel pie. Story-wise, this level is a complete sidebar, but it's one that I really truly adore. Along with the MI6-based level, it's one of my very favourites in the game, and maybe that's because it reminds me of one of my favourite sequences from Skyfall, or maybe it's because it's an environment that I can relate to in real life, and that makes it fun. I don't know why, but I just love it. Seriously though, did Sam Mendes play this game in preparation for Skyfall and was all like, no one will know if I steal from this? Because there are some very close similarities between the game and the film, including a bit where you have to dodge a speeding tube train to get through a door. There are plenty of hostages to be saved again, and depending on the difficulty setting you opted for, this can be a bit of a recurring element throughout the game. It feels like there are often hostages to be saved, but it means that there's a little bit more skill required in knowing when to just start blasting your way through and when to be more careful. There were definitely times where I'd mess up and I'd fail the game, but apparently it's only a fail if you yourself kill a hostage. If they're caught in the crossfire, then, well... R.I.P. Sheriff P. There's a bomb to dispose of, which makes for a nice bit of tense gameplay after all this action. You need to be really careful about how you defuse it, though, otherwise it goes off. And I do love that they actually went to the effort of animating a cutscene for if you fail and the bomb actually does explode. No eel pie for me tonight. The level ends in the shadow of the Millennium Dome as the cigar girl takes off in a hot air balloon but blows herself up before the story moves to the MI6 headquarters in Scotland, and we get all of the exposition about the money being a setup to kill Robert King, and it's all down to a terrorist named Renard, and Bond needs to go and protect King's daughter, Electra.
Electra has taken over the construction of her father's oil pipeline from the Caspian Sea. Find out who switched the lapel pin. If Renard returns, make sure Electra comes to no harm.
Worth pointing out here that much like its PS1 counterpart, this game does not use the movie cast, and instead we have sound-alikes, including the same bizarrely accented lady as Electra.
My family has relied on MI6 twice. I won't make the same mistake again. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to check the upper survey site. There's snow and ice up there, so I have to do this on skis.
I think it comes down to the fact that the actress is pronouncing the words as you would in French, but she's speaking them with an English accent. I feel like she'd have been better taking some inspiration from Monsieur Aubergine from A View to a Kill.
I'm pleased you approve, since you're paying the bill. Cheers.
Ma family has relied on MI6 twice, Monsieur Bond.
Anyway, this leads us into level 5, Cold Reception, which is a... Oh dear god, no, not a skiing level. Oh, hello. I'm just having a nice bath. Where did we get to again? It was the top 10 Penelope Smallbone moments from Octopussy video, wasn't it? Number 7. The immaculate way in which she addresses James Bond by his full title.
Thank you, Commander Bond.
Now there's a girl with respect.
Number 6. The way she smooths out her skirt to avoid creases when she sits down. Number 5. Her silent seeking of approval from Miss Moneypenny before accepting the flowers from Commander Pond, paired with fear in her eyes as she herself is aware that she is muscling in on a line manager's turf, possibly even flashing forward to the countless bickerings and snide passive aggression which will undoubtedly lead to her ultimate dismissal from the role and to never be heard of again. Number 4. Shooting down the Parahawks while speeding down slopes at a significant... Oh god. I really have to talk about this, don't I? Okay, if you're familiar with my other Bond video game reviews, you'll know that I'm no fan of skiing levels, and I don't think that this game series handles skiing levels particularly well, particularly in the case of 007 Legends and the PS1 Tomorrow Never Dies, so if I can get through this level without feeling the need to throw myself off the Golden Gate Bridge, I will consider that a win. And to be honest, it is one of the better ones. It works more as an on-rails shooting segment than anything else, so I'm reminded of levels from Agent Under Fire and Nightfire that used such mechanics. This gives the player more control though, so you can speed up and slow down, you can strafe left and right, which means that you can take different paths at a few points, and there are plenty of goons to fire at. I guess my main criticism is that the whole thing just feels kinda pointless, I guess. Like, I played this level a few times in order to unlock a multiplayer level, you needed to complete it in a certain time, and really, if you just power through and take out a few guys along the way, you can get through it really quickly by just, like, speeding through it. It's actually just kind of easier to speed through it rather than to slow down and take the time to shoot everyone. That being said, it's still a big improvement over the clunkiness of its sister skiing level on the PS1. And a similar sentiment can be extended to the next level, Night Watch, as well, which features very similar objectives in both versions. MI6 are now convinced that Elektra is in danger of being attacked by Renard, and they suspect the traitor is in her ranks, Davidov, namely, and so Bond needs to tap some phones, photograph some evidence, etc., all while staying undetected from Davidov and Elektra's bodyguard, Gabor. And hey, John Cleese's arm pops up bizarrely to explain how to deactivate the security cameras.
Apart from the patrolling guards, you'll need to watch out for the security cameras. They've got motion sensors with a limited range. Each set of cameras is linked to a nearby security office, so your best course of action is probably finding those security centers and disabling their systems.
Yeah, that's why John Cleese gets the big bucks. No one can explain how to deactivate security cameras quite the same way as him. John Cleese is the only actor to reprise his role from the film in this game, and that's all well and good and really cool, but he's used so sparingly throughout the game that when he does pop up, it actually ends up feeling kind of jarring. Particularly as they have someone else voicing the Q character. In the PS1 version, Cleese's inclusion is consistent. He's part of the mission briefings. Here we only have text briefings, and I assume that that's to do with technical limitations of this game being on the N64, and probably the same technical limitations that mean we don't have cutscenes taken directly from the movie like in the PlayStation version. But if they had access to John Cleese, I mean, why not use him more? I guess they tried to keep his dialogue to the more tech-related stuff, and Robinson is the one giving you the mission briefing exposition, but Cleese pops up so sparingly throughout, it just ends up feeling quite odd. Obviously, this is a stealth-based level. You have your X-ray glasses to help you see through walls. I love that Gabor is just prowling around the level, pausing to scratch his bum, and you have to hide around corners, and this environment is just really great. It's a curious stealth level in that Gabor and Davidov are really the only figures that you need to completely avoid. I'm used to stealth levels in Bond games being a case of, like, if you alert a guard or kill them accidentally or they get to an alarm, it's game over, but actually alerting guards is something that you can easily recover from in this game. Like, here I caught the attention of 4 guards who were all shooting their unsilenced weapons at me, and I'm like, well, this is clearly all over, but no, it turns out you can just tranquilize them and then punch their sleeping bodies and they disappear, and that's it. In general, enemy AI in this game is inconsistent to say the least. Sometimes you can take out a guard literally stood next to another and they don't even notice, and other times you can wander into an area that you've not even been to yet and the guards are just there waiting for you like they're expecting you, which, to be fair, I guess most Bond villains are indeed expecting the man, so makes sense from that perspective, really. The level ends with Bond sneaking into the back of Davidov's car, driving off into the next level, Midnight Departure, which sees Bond tasked with assuming the identity of Davidov, who himself was assuming the identity of a Dr. Arkov before boarding a plane destined for Kazakhstan in his place. This is a terrifically designed level, and one that allows for a great deal of freedom
in the gameplay. Stealth tactics have their advantage, as does just blasting in all guns blazing. Killing Davidov is a task, and you can accomplish this right at the start of the level by just charging up to him and opening fire, or if you take your time and try to do things a bit sneakily, chances are you'll only find him towards the very end of the level and kill him in the flight control building. Just in general, this game's level design is really great, particularly when compared with its PS1 counterpart. The levels in that game felt so small and restrictive, but here it's just great to kind of explore around. There are plenty of different routes to take, which can lead to great variation and replay value, and I love the scope of this airfield environment at the end. This area is massive, and just using the night vision to take out the guards in the towers is really cool and fun, and I love that the objectives actually include finding a sports bag to take to the guy to let you on the plane at the very end in a nice little nod to the movie. It's a terrific level, and so far I'm just having an absolute blast with this game. And you know what? The good vibes keep on rolling into Masquerade, which sees Bond infiltrate a nuclear testing facility in disguise as Dr. Arkov. I love that one of the mission objectives up front is just Christmas must survive. Like, imagine if someone is playing this game who hasn't seen the film and doesn't know of that character. Like, how would you react to that?
So do we need to hold hands and sing carols? I mean, what?
No, of course, it's about protecting Dr. Christmas Jones, who is probably better transitioned to this digitized form than any other actor in this thing. I think she actually looks quite good in this game, particularly when compared to the white-haired goblin that is M in this game. Christmas leads you down into the bunker, and this is another level vastly improved from the PS1 version, but more on that in a moment as we meet Renard for the first time in the game.
I should be grateful. You delivered the money, you killed King, and now you brought me the plane.
That bomb will never leave this place.
Neither will you. There's no point in living if you can't feel alive.
Drop the gun, now! There are too many new faces around here. Everyone's on the surface.
The action from here on closely resembles the action in the film. A firefight breaks out, and after using a grapple to get out of this pit, you push some sort of trolley thing along a track while Renard's men pop out and shoot at you. Of course, when you get to Renard, he's behind a bulletproof screen and leaves in a lift before setting off a bomb. That sees you recreate that cool as hell moment from the film before you blast your way out of the facility while chaos breaks out. I love how this level ends too when you get to the lift with Christmas and there's just this wall of fire getting closer and closer. Are you gonna press the button, or am I? Might be worth doing this sooner rather than later? This ends the level with another recreation of another of my favorite moments from the film.
So you're a British spy. Do you have a name?
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Another take with more gusto, please? Before things take a bit of a confusing turn story-wise, and we cut to M and Electra in a place we've never actually been.
I have a present for you. Something that belonged to my father. He would have wanted you to have it. He often spoke of how compassionately you advised him during my kidnapping.
His lapel pin.
But it's very valuable, you know. I just couldn't let it explode with the rest of him. Take her to the helicopter.
I'm starting to get the impression it's not all in the past after all.
So this is obviously the scene from the film that reveals that Electra is the big bad villain and been pulling the strings all along, which is all well and good, but for people who hadn't seen the film prior to playing this game, I can't imagine how this came off. It ends up feeling super random in this context.
It's probably an issue that goes back to the fact that, well, due to technical limitations, they can't use cutscene clips from the film itself, and they're having to try to cover a lot of the same story plot points in a much more brief way. And I know that this is a game first, and obviously the gameplay is the most important thing in that regard, but when it comes to Bond games specifically, I'm always really interested to see how the stories themselves are told. I do have to say I have a preference for animated cutscenes actually, over just using clips from the film, even if the animation is incredibly limited. However, for a story like this that is so centered around the relationship drama between Electra and Bond and M, it's tough to pull off, and I'm certainly not invested in any story element like I might be in other Bond games, Nightfire being the prime example. Even with the limitations they had, they still made time for emotional moments, and characters had enough to them that I felt like they had personality. Here, that's not the case, and a good chunk has been taken out of the story that isn't replicated in another way, namely the love scenes between Electra and Bond, which are fairly pivotal to a moment later in the story in both the film and the PS1 game, but here, nope. And I'm not saying that I'm desperate to see these strangely proportioned polygon nightmares awkwardly making moves on one another under bedsheets, but maybe something would have been helpful?
The exposition of why M was even in Turkey to begin with is relayed by Robinson at the start of the next mission briefing. I love that now he has 2 panels to himself. Like, could have just done this whole briefing in 1 panel, but no, he wants you to know that he occupies M's space on the board now. Are we sure he isn't the one pulling all the strings just so that he could get the top job? Anyway, the next couple of levels are probably the toughest in the whole game. City of Walkways 1 and 2, which are all situated at the Caviar factory of a Mr. Valentin Zukovsky, who hasn't been mentioned in the game so far, so if you haven't seen the film by the time you were playing this game, sorry. Also confusing the story somewhat is that after this incredibly expositional text briefing from Robinson, the level begins as if Bond is only just finding out about this all now.
Robinson, tell M that Renard has escaped with a nuclear warhead.
Red alert. Listen, 007. M is missing. Electra King killed her guards and abducted her.
Electra must have been in league with Renard ever since she was kidnapped.
And to top it all off, they got the wrong voice for Robinson. If this is supposed to be Robinson, I mean, he sounds quite different to how he sounded earlier in the game.
Electra's villa has a high level of security. Take a quiet look around and see what Davidov is up to.
Red alert. Listen, 007. M is missing. Electra King killed her guards and abducted her.
R is here to tell you about the security system.
It looks that way. What is your current situation?
If I can give the PS1 version of the game just one compliment over the N64 version, it is that it does tell a better story. In the N64 version, it feels like the cutscenes and the dialogue is something of an afterthought almost, and I don't know if the people who were writing those were talking to the people writing the mission briefings, because it doesn't gel together all that well. And maybe this doesn't matter because this is a game, of course, and it's the gameplay that's important, but just as an overall piece, I like to see how Bond games reinterpret the stories that we're so used to from the films for their own mediums, and in this case, I don't think it translates terribly well. Anyway, I do nonetheless love the character of Valentin Zukovsky, so it's a pleasure to see him here all the same, and there's some nicely reproduced art from the film throughout the level.
I think Renard is working with Electra King. They've stolen a nuclear warhead and kidnapped M.
Helicopters and mercenaries! Lots of them coming this way!
I see that I have no choice in the matter then. I will make you a deal. Keep those thugs outside away from me, and I'll give you everything I have on Renard and Electra.
So these 2 levels are quite punishing, but in a good way, I would say. When I was doing these on Secret Agent difficulty, it was quite a challenge, largely down to the fact that you have helicopters firing at you, there are grenade launchers to contend with, and goons are firing at you through the N64 fog from afar, so you can't see them, but they can still hit you. And at times, it was maybe a little bit frustrating, but frustrating in a good way. Like, I wanted to beat the thing, I wanted to get the knack of it, and that's great when compared to games like 007 Racing and Tomorrow Never Dies, where I just wanted to be done with the experience. I mean, I tell you, I'd rather have my scrotum bashed with a heavy rope than play that Wayland level again. The second City of Walkways in particular is just so much fun. The chainsaw helicopters are flying around in this level and cutting up pathways and zipping around super quick, which is an awful lot of fun. The ending took me quite a while to get a hang of, actually, though. There's a boss fight with a helicopter that is relentlessly firing at you, and you have a sentinel rocket, and it took me a while to work out that once you fired the rockets, you could control them through the air still, but doing that whilst under fire and while the target is moving around in front of you is really quite challenging, but I eventually figured out that if you stay underneath the helicopter, it makes it an awful lot easier to shoot, and it can't shoot at you as easily, and it took me, like, well, maybe my 6th or 7th attempt to get this right, but I felt just a great sense of reward for having accomplished it. The level ends with such a bizarre cutscene in context, though. Like, Valentin is stuck in the Caviar as in the film, but at no point in the game do we see him fall in it, and he's talking so casually while treading water, or treading caviar, I guess, that I'd love to know what gamers unfamiliar with the story thought of this moment. What the hell?
I sometimes get hold of Russian machinery for Electra King. She's paying me $1 million for a special job. My nephew Nikolai is smuggling some equipment to Istanbul for her. Electra has tried to kill me already, so Nikolai may be in danger.
Funnily enough, I'm not bothered so much by all that anymore. I'm more concerned with how the hell you got in there.
This is my business now too, Mr. Bond.
So yeah, into the next level. Zukovsky's nephew Nikolai is smuggling some equipment to Electra in Istanbul, so Bond heads there with Christmas to investigate, figuring out that Electra is actually after Nikolai's nuclear submarine, specifically to, of course, destroy the city and surrounding area so that the world will rely on her oil alone for decades to come.
Bomb!
I've got to stop bullying warning Renard.
The group survive an assassination attempt by Sokovsky's bodyguard Bullion, which takes us into a really cool chase level through the streets of Istanbul. This is of course very similar in setup to a level from the PS1 version, but done so much better here. Just in general, the level design on the N64 version feels so much more explorative. Like, the PS1 version feels so small and one-track, where these environments reward a little exploration here and there, and I like spending time in the space, and I like to detour from the mission objectives every once in a while to explore. And while these comments obviously need to be contextualized in the time this game was released, and also the fact that I'm a content-starved Bond fan, so I am perhaps a little bit more excited by experiencing new Bond things than I might normally be. This is so cool! Look at his little mole! But again, I'm having such a fun time with this game. This is a terrific environment, love going through the market and blasting around the rooftops. It's terrific stuff. Again, did Sam Mendes play this game? The level ends with Bond and Christmas captured, while back at the ranch, Renard kills Nikolai and meets with Elektra.
The reactor is secure. Everything is going as planned. This is the end.
No, this is the beginning. The world will never be the same again.
I'm convinced some dialect specialist could earn a doctorate writing a paper on this accent. Sometimes every word sounds like it's from a different nationality. The next level, Fallen Angel, begins with a much abbreviated cutscene where Bond is strapped to Elektra's torture chair before Zukovsky barges in and, all because he's too lazy to walk over to a table to pick up a hat himself, gets killed by Elektra.
Bring it to me.
I mean, you're closer to it than I am, but okay, whatever. I never saw this coming.
The rest of the level is bombing around Elektra's Maiden's tower base. There are a couple of ways to go about playing with different routes to take, which is cool, and again helps add to the replay value so much. The level also features my favourite death animation of the whole game. There's this one goon who really ums it up for the camera.
Speak me fair in death.
By the way, I really love how the weapons handle in this game. I don't feel like there's a terribly huge selection, and you very much have, you start with your Wolfram P2K, and then there's a variety of machine guns to pick up along the way, maybe a shotgun here and there, but still, the feeling when they fire, the aiming accuracy, the sounds, the reload animation, it's all really terrific, and being the massive Nightfire geek that I am, I do get a kick out of seeing weapons that would clearly be redeveloped and used again in that game, like the Sentinel rocket launcher and the Raptor, which is a really nice, cool, powerful handgun, and obviously this is a first-person shooter, and the shooting mechanic is the most important element, and I'm happy to say that it's really terrific. Also, there's a bit of this level that sure as hell caught me off guard when I first played it, where you need to use your grapple to escape this gas chamber that Elektra has somehow installed in this hundreds of years old structure, but you do of course eventually make it to M, and releasing her prompts a cutscene where Elektra takes her away and you have to face off with Gabor. In the PS1 version, this was a real boss fight. Here, it's a little disappointing. You just zap him and then he surrenders and you just have to kill him in cold blood, I guess. Getting to the top of the tower puts you face to face with Elektra, who has M. Not at gunpoint, really, just sort of next to her while she holds a gun, which is weird. Ultimately, this showdown feels less satisfying than in the PS1 version, where Elektra had a gun to M's head and you needed to act quick to save her. Here, they're both just staring blankly at you, and it feels like you kill her out of more of a need to break the awkwardness of the moment than anything else. Don't get me wrong, there is still urgency here. If you do nothing, she will eventually kill M, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel as exciting. I do love how M casually adjusts her hair after you kill Elektra. It's such an oddly casual move.
Right, well, now that that's over, we can get back to real business.
I also love how the objectives don't actually tell you to kill Elektra, but rather just to silence her, which, I mean, if that's the objective, then maybe violence wasn't needed in this confrontation after all.
I will kill your beloved boss and the entire world. Did you just... Shh! I can't believe it. What are you doing? Zip it!
And with that, it's on to the final two levels of the game, a sinking feeling and meltdown. You're tasked with getting on board the submarine and stopping Renard. I'm not sure if I accomplished the start of this level quite in the spirit of which it was intended, though. They have all these guards patrolling the walkway to the sub, and you're supposed to get on it without raising the alarm, but I found the easier way is just hopping in the water and then climbing onto the other side of the submarine and getting in that way. This is a really cool location, though, and it's a shame not to spend more time in it, but the rest of the game is spent inside the submarine. There are hostages to rescue, of course, because this is the world is not enough for the N64, and you'd hope to find a significant other that looked at you the same way this game looks at hostages, but you need to be sure not to raise the alarm to alert more goons. The laser watch comes in handy for disabling said alarms as you go. This is a nice, tight environment, and a pretty tricky level, to be honest. It's easy to be ambushed and overwhelmed by the guards, but again, every challenge this game poses feels like it adds to the experience rather than takes away. It never becomes frustrating. Saving Christmas and escorting her to the mine room is a key objective, and leaving her in the capable hands of random Russian soldier before you can head up and destroy the sub controls, plummeting the sub to the bottom of the sea and flooding the whole thing, which means the majority of the final level sees the player controlling Bond underwater in a sequence that, despite being a bit fiddly to control, is a really cool reproduction of a sequence from the film. It's a total labyrinth, and visibility isn't very good, and if you run out of oxygen, your health starts depleting really quickly, but for the last level of the game, I think it presents a cool challenge, and while even just pivoting direction is a little annoying, it's still quite fun floating around in this space. And it's fun even when you're out of the water too. I love using the grapple to zip up the ship to a final confrontation with Renard, which is, like its PS1 sister, a huge disappointment. In both games, he's off limits to the player behind some glass, putting his massive rod into a hole, and you just have to run over and hit a button to send it impaling into him.
I feel nothing.
Obviously, it's accurate to the movie, but I don't know, when it comes to shooting games, I always feel slightly cheated when the final boss battle doesn't actually involve any shooting. Zipping up a few more levels reunites you with Dr. Jones and the pair if you swim away to the game's final cutscene.
I've always wanted to have Christmas in Turkey.
And it's into the credits, but the fun doesn't stop there. Oh no, there's a multiplayer included, and my god, the character selection is probably the greatest to have ever graced a Bond game. There's obviously Bond and Christmas and Renard and Electra and so on, but different variations are unlockable for some of the characters, so whether you want to be Dr. Jones or the much less formal Christmas Jones, pretty much every character skin in the game is playable. So for all of you bank staff and salesman fans, we are truly in a golden age. And speaking of golden, some classic characters are included as unlockables too, and it's all the favourites to that point, like Jaws, Mayday, Oddjob, and so on. But probably the most exciting element of all is the fact that Judi Dench's M is a playable multiplayer skin. This is terrific. Finally, we can have the M versus Sir Robert King deathmatch Bond fans have been seeking for years. Hold on to your hats, folks. Here we go. Good characters cannot fight other good characters?
What the hell is going on?
Okay, so I don't know why this surprised me so much. It's pretty much a common element of Bond multiplayer that good guy characters can't be put into a deathmatch scenario with other good guy characters, and I assume this is some kind of Eon restriction so that we don't have a situation where we see Moneypenny blowing up Robinson with a grenade launcher, and I guess they're looking at this from a character perspective, that these characters wouldn't do that in the films, so we can't have them doing that in the games, but really it feels like a note a parent would give at a focus group. It feels like it comes from someone who doesn't actually play games. I know I'm making a big song and dance about this, but it's frustrating in a situation like this where you have so many designated good characters in the roster, some of them completely arbitrary. I mean, take Businesswoman for example. Who's to say she's a good character? She might kick dogs and stamp on mice for all we know, but for some reason, the very notion of her and Wei Lin in a death match together is beyond abhorrent. And it means that, for an instance, if you and three mates are wanting to play this game, it means that only one of you would be able to have access to about half the available skins, and I can't imagine how many arguments this would cause. Oh great, look, it's not going to let us play. You're going to have to change your character. Me? Why me? Look, you were Sir Robert King for 6 rounds the last time we played. Why can't you be Davidoff or Leshez instead? Why can't you change? Because I never get to be Robinson, and just for once in my life I want to see a shootout between him and Max Zorin. Oh. Mom, Calvin's swearing. So obviously I'm making this review while we're in a countrywide lockdown, and I have no personal memories of playing this game in the past like I do with GoldenEye, but thankfully this game allowed for the use of up to 3 multiplayer bots, and so I was able to bomb around some of these environments fighting AI, and oh my goodness, why didn't I have this game as a kid? I feel like I've seriously missed out on something great with this. There are a variety of game modes and weapon sets, and a good few arenas to choose from. 4 of those you need to unlock, but these maps are really, really great. Some are just maps taken from single-player levels with tweaks here and there, but some are entirely original environments. I really like the Hedge Maze Labyrinth, which I assume is a reference to the Spectre training camp from Russia with Love. There's a level called Field of Fire that's clearly based on a location from The World's Not Enough movie that we don't see in the single-player story of this game. The corridors of MI6 are an available map, which is awesome, but by far my favourite is the Skyrail level, which features cable cars running between two stations, adorned with a low-res gun barrel image of Timothy Dalton's Bond for some reason. Again, I'm a massive Nightfire fan, so the fact that we have a level here that is so clearly a predecessor to something that I'm very familiar with from that game is really cool, and honestly, this whole multiplayer is so well designed and the levels so nice and varied. It's really terrific, and I'm so grateful that they included bots in this multiplayer so players can still have some kind of experience with it, even if the days of calling friends around for multiplayer are fewer and far between. During recording footage for this playthrough, I would occasionally just dip into the multiplayer for a round or two against bots. It's just so much fun, and probably the only game in history that allows Dame Judi Dench to kill you with an AK-47. So that's The World Is Not Enough for the Nintendo 64, probably the best Bond game that hardly anyone actually played. Okay, so maybe that's not entirely fair. The game did actually outsell its PS1 sister, and heck, sold more copies than From Russia with Love and Bloodstone did, and yet, despite that, I feel like I never really hear or see people talking about this one all that much. Maybe it's just been something of a blind spot for me, as it's honestly the only post-GoldenEye home console Bond game that I didn't attempt to play at some point when I was younger, and it just doesn't occupy that same nostalgic space in my head like so many of the other Bond games do. For years I've been meaning to get around to it, after having been recommended it usually along with lines like, it's actually so much better and completely different to the PS1 version, and that advice was 100% correct. This game is indeed much better and completely different to the PS1 version, and that's a game that I did actually enjoy returning to recently for its own review. But the N64 version is in another league. It feels like a real warm-up for what Eurocom were to achieve with Nightfire, but considering this was a game for the N64, it holds up remarkably well. Obviously the graphics are dated now, and the body proportions of some of the characters are especially blocky, so much so that it feels almost like this could be a Lego Bond game at some points, but despite that, it certainly looks a lot more modern than GoldenEye, even if it does lack the distinct vibe of that game. The gameplay runs really smoothly, and the core shooting mechanic is terrific fun. Levels are designed in such a way to reward exploration and replay value. Increased difficulty brings new mission objectives. As a single-player experience, this is certainly ranking high for me when it comes to Bond games. I think the game's main fault as an overall package is the fact that the presentation of the story is really messy, and I know that the developers were up against so many technical limitations that mean we have the game we have, and gameplay should of course be first and foremost, but even GoldenEye, with its lack of cutscenes and dialogue, told a better narrative through the text dossier briefings, I feel. However, this is of course minor quibbling, because I think this game very much deserves to be played still and remembered fondly along with GoldenEye. Speaking personally too, for Bond fans this last year or so, it's been such a content drought as we await the postponed release of No Time to Die, and for me personally, discovering this game for the first time felt really special and just made me so appreciative of the fact that we do have so much legacy content out there to consume and scratch that Bond itch, and the fact that a game from the year 2000 can play so well 21 years later is such a testament to the excellent and incredibly talented people that developed and produced it. I know it's probably a bit of a pain these days to dust off the old N64 and connect it to a modern TV, or you might be like me and kind of new to emulators, and it might be kind of tricky to figure out how to work the whole thing at first, but really I feel like I've ended a lot of Bond video game reviews of this era on the note of like, well, it's interesting for die-hard Bond fans, but I wouldn't recommend it beyond that. This is a game that I would recommend beyond that. I think if you enjoy GoldenEye N64, if you enjoyed that game, I think this is a really great companion to that game, and in many ways is even better than that. So I'm going to end this video with a wholehearted recommendation of this game. It actually surprised me how much I love this game, and it's up there with some of my very favourite Bond games, like Nightfire, Agent Under Fire, Everything or Nothing from Russia with Love. Like, this sits alongside those, even though I'm very, very new to it, and it's competing with an awful lot of nostalgic memories, but I just had such an excellent time with it that, yeah, wholehearted recommendation. That is it for this time, Bond fans. If you are new to this channel, please do consider going below and clicking the subscribe button and the Mrs. Bell button to stay up to date on future video uploads. Still got plenty of Bond games to go at, as well as many other aspects of Bond media to cover on this channel, so please scroll below and hit those buttons to stay up to date. Also below are links to my social media channels, so you can follow me on my Facebook page, my Twitter page where I'm really active these days, and there is even my Patreon page if you want to go one extra step in supporting this channel and get a few exclusive videos and the like here and there. But head over to that page for more details on that. And with all that being said, so long for now, Bond fans.